All right, hello everybody. I have something for you today that should be nice and short, but today is May 17th, and it is the birthday of a man who was called Julius Sumner Miller. Now, many of you might not have heard of him. He died in 1987, so he was kind of not a part of, a lot of people might be too young to have heard of him, but what he was, or what he did, was he was kind of a physics, what would you call it? Like a physics ambassador on television over throughout a good chunk of his life. He got his master's degree in physics in 1933. He spent a bunch of time doing various jobs using his knowledge in physics, for various organizations. But eventually, he got a television show called "Why Is It So?" And he later on went on to become Professor Wonderful for the Mickey Mouse Club with Disney. He did a series of programs, which is where I found out about him, called Demonstrations in Physics, or Science Demonstrations, when they were later released on PBS. I used to watch those shows. It would be like 15 minutes, like right after I got out of school in the late 90s, or mid to late 90s. So I'd basically run home, flip on science demonstrations, watch Miller do his thing, and then go on with my after school day. But it was something that I enjoyed for a couple of years. He did other shows called such as The Hilarious House of Frightenstein and The Professor and the Inquiring Minds. He did a lot of work in Australia. He survived 2 heart attacks, but ended up dying in 1987 from leukemia. Interesting little point from Wikipedia, because I wanted to get some biographical tidbits. But in his will, he willed his body to be donated to a dentistry school, which is what happened to him. He also did just kind of a funny little tidbit, but he also did a thing called Millergrams, which are like little physics riddles, if you will. The one that I read about is, let's assume there's a bridge, and the bridge is capable of handling the weight of a man and one ball. Can a juggler walk across by making sure that only one of the balls is ever, in his hands at one time, or will the bridge collapse? And the answer is that the bridge will collapse because the force required to throw a ball upward will break the bridge, basically. He also created a game called Miller Anagrams, which is kind of like a variation of Scrabble, but with the ability to rearrange words that are already on the board. So, with that said, my personal experience, is that he had this little show, and I didn't know anything about him at the time. I was in late middle school, early high school, but it was kind of fun because he would just very enthusiastically and with a good sense of humor, and with a very strong and interesting voice, and I tried to make my hair go out, but my hair's too short; it won't do it. So he had a funny hairstyle too, and it was just fun. He would do these really like kind of basic demonstrations of like physical principles using things that you can just kind of find around the house, or things that you could maybe go buy at a Home Depot. Things like expansion under pressure and momentum, friction, that kind of stuff. A lot of fun mechanics demonstrations for the most part. But that was kind of how I got to know his work, and I've seen some more of his stuff since then. He's always entertaining to watch because he's got this very, very like inquisitive style. Like there's this great clip of him trying to basically make vacuum pressure collapse like a steel drum, and it kind of doesn't work, but then it suddenly does work, and his reactions are kind of priceless there. He's like, well, this is what we're doing, and sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes you need to understand that you need to kind of look for cases where things don't work and explain why, and stuff like that, and some very fun stuff from him, and I've kind of enjoyed his work over the course of my life, and was one of the things that kept me. I mean, I didn't find out about him until I was pretty sure that I wanted to get into sciences, But when I went from kind of the physics biology regime to the not physics bio, the chemistry biology regime to the physics regime, I was kind of I kind of remembered those shows fondly, and it helped push me into the direction that I ended up going today. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of say a little happy birthday for Julius Sumner Miller. Say, kind of maybe encourage a few people to go take a look at some of his stuff. It's quite fun. It's never boring. It's never slow. Sometimes there's a pause, and then something happens, and sometimes there's a pause and nothing happens. But regardless of what happens, Miller is always fun to watch and listen to. He's got a great just a great style in the way that he talks about things, and he's so enthusiastic and happy to see these principles of reality demonstrated in these little mundane ways. And so yeah, that's what I've got for today. I figured it would be a fun little video to do today because he deserves people to go look at him. So I'll put a bunch of links in the description. And when I say a bunch, it's going to be probably like 2 or 3 because I'll put a couple of YouTube links and I'll put something. I think I found like one of the full series over on like archive.org, so I'll put that too. But anyway, if you like physics, or if you just like good presentation, he's worth taking a look at to see how he did what he did and why he became so popular. He was one of those people who had a big impact on a lot of people just because somehow he was interesting enough that people went and watched him talk about physics and science and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's what I got for today. Hope you enjoy. As always, there will be stuff in the description for you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you next time.